Silver is at a major crossroads right now. We're going to look at a chart that will show you definitively we are in for the fight of our lives at $29 per ounce in silver. What about $33 per ounce silver? You want to sell your silver for $33 per ounce? I'll show you where you can do that. And on top of that, it's going to be real interesting when you consider that this place where you can sell your silver for $33, they're running out of silver. But let's go to the chart first and see why we are in for the fight of our lives. This one comes from our friend Oren over at the, hold on a second. Whoop. We're going to slow down. There we go. Okay, the Silver Hermit, Oren, right? Silver's approaching a moment of decision. Guys, we are in a big fight right now. This is the chart of silver going back to March. Remember back in March? Let's take a second to how do you feel when you remember that just back in March we had silver around $22 per ounce. Okay, but look at this trend line going up, 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 up. We can see right here. Not too long ago, about a month ago, we were at $32 silver. Again, $32 silver. As you know, we've been in a bit of a downtrend. We did not. We failed yesterday. We failed to hold $30 an ounce. I warned you guys. I said I thought we could have a big surprise with the inflation numbers. And then during yesterday's live stream, we talked about the Fed could throw cold water on the situation. They have indeed done that, okay? Doesn't mean that everything's done, everything's over. It just means we're in for a fight right now to hold support right here at the $29 range. You see the red line coming up, the blue channel coming down. As you can see, $29 had been kind of a resistance level. Hey, look, if we get below 29, I said it a few weeks ago, we could go to 26. I don't think that's going to happen. Right now, we're going to be optimistic and we're going to believe, basement dwellers, that we can hold the line on the silver price at $29 per ounce. Even $28.50 per ounce is okay, right? Let's go out and get an update on the price right now live. This is not the actual price. I need to press the refresh button. Okay. Hey, not too bad, guys. Gold is trading right now at $2,315. Silver, $29.18 per ounce. Thanks to our friends at Pimbex, where you, if you're interested in buying some silver, gold, or platinum group metals, can get the best prices, best service, and a great selection of metals. And if you ever want to convert all or a part of an IRA into precious metals, you'll always find that you get more metal for your money at Pimbex. Give them a try. Thank you, Pimbex, for the quote as well. Let's go back here, guys. So yesterday was a weird day. What if I told you that we don't even really have to worry about the inflation numbers? We don't even really have to worry about what the Fed says. We're going to talk more about that later. But I forgot to tell you, we have a big special guest today. Pat Holland is going to join us. You know Patrick, right? He's been on Liberty and Finance. He's becoming famous, and rightfully so, because this guy can share insights with you on the silver and gold market, things you've never thought of. Every time I talk to Pat, there's like a new, just when you think there may not be another light bulb in this head, or maybe your head as well, Pat Holland can turn on some light bulbs for you. So we'll look forward to seeing Patrick here in just a little bit. What if I told you you could sell your silver for $33 an ounce right now? Okay. Last night we had a big beatdown in the silver price, right? But nonetheless, I want you to take a look at this, because when we go to our friend the Oriental Ghost, he points out for us that, yes, last night, AG, that's silver, on the Shanghai Gold Exchange closed at $33 per ounce. On the Shanghai Futures Exchange, okay, silver closed at $33.20 per ounce. That's the physical market. I'm going to say it every day till the end of time. That's a physical market. That's not a make-believe, unicorn, fart dust, paper, leverage, derivative market. That's a real market. But what if I told you that the amount of metal, and you have to actually have physical metal to trade in the Shanghai Gold Exchange market, to trade silver, you have to have the silver on deposit. What if I told you at this market where they're selling silver for, if they're selling it for $33 an ounce, wouldn't you think they'd have like mounds and mounds and mounds of it? Wouldn't you think that would be the case if their price is so unreasonable compared to the United States of America, where we're fighting for $29 per ounce? Wouldn't you think that on the Chinese market, the physical market, where they're charging so much more, $4 per ounce more for 1 ounce of silver, that they would just have mount? No, because when we look at it, the vaults of the Shanghai Futures Exchange dropped to a new low and fell below 700 tons for the second day since 2020. Look at this, guys. The red line is a chart of the amount of inventory at the Shanghai Gold Exchange. Okay, look, down, down, down. Despite, doesn't that make you go, huh? Like what? Doesn't that make you a little curious that if they're charging such a high price for physical silver in China, why is the amount of inventory they have available for sale going down, down, down? I don't know. I'll let you ponder on that one, because it doesn't make sense, right? It makes absolutely no sense. But it does make sense when you look at it through the prism of the fact, right, that the silver price is blatantly manipulated in the United States and in London at the COMEX and the LBMA. Those boys over in London, England, they've been manipulating the price of precious metals for decades and decades. And the East is taking control of the market, okay? So we're at this war. We're at a critical juncture right now in the silver market. Look, we could go lower, but remember this, guys, right? Think about it. Think about it. It's funny almost. I mean, it's sad and funny. Look, I gotta be honest with you. I have to give you a confession, okay? I have more than half of my net worth somehow tied to the value of precious metals. So I eat my own cooking, right? I am all in on the idea that the metals are undervalued. I know it's painful, and I know if we go to $26 silver, it's not going to be any fun. But it's almost humorous when you really take a step back. Do you ever do that? Take a step back and look at what's really going on in the world. What are the real fundamental drivers, right? The solar demand for silver, all the supply demand, just the whole big picture of what's going on with the BRICS countries. The fact that they still in the West are attempting to suppress the value of silver and gold. I mean, it's sad, but it's almost funny at the same time, okay? Let's run over to our friends at the Silver Academy. This was from 2 days ago. This was before the even more egregious downdraft in the amount of silver, physical silver. Remember, the people that are selling it for this sky-high price of $33 per ounce, they can't keep it in stock. What does that tell you, huh? It's kind of like if you wanted to go buy some hamburger, if you needed to buy some hamburger meat, and the Walmart grocery store had it for $5 a pound, but the local Aldi had it for $4 a pound, but you go to the Aldi and there's no hamburger, right? Obviously, the hamburger's worth more. Wow, what a horrible analogy I just gave you. I apologize. Shanghai vaults bleed to 8-year low. Vaults sink. This is from 2 days ago. Listen to this. What does this tell you? Vaults sink to a level where India could wipe out the Shanghai Gold Exchange vaults in 1 month, okay? Silver bleed continues at a fierce and intense rate, draining the vaults to an 8.5-year low, 722 tons, or 23 million ounces. We know now, guys, let's go back here real quick. We know now it's no longer 722. It's like below 680. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Now, keep in mind, just one of these little things you might want to keep in the back of your mind. There's been no significant silver discoveries on the planet. The world is running out of silver. There's another chart of the inventories. It's unbelievable. Here's a great silver starting to look very good. Let's take a look at this chart from Rashad, right? This guy's a very smart guy. There's that updraft we looked at earlier. There's that zone where we are right now, okay? And he shows it, boink. Wow, he actually predicted the future, boink. Boo, let's hope he's right, okay? Let's hope this level right here where you see that hourglass is $29 per ounce. that this holds. If we go lower, guys, it's not the end of the world, okay? I want to show you something. I see my friend Pat Holland is on. We're going to get with Pat in like 60 seconds because I want to go out to Pembex one more time quickly. And I want you to look at these numbers, okay? All right. Sure, gold 23.10, silver 29 on the dot. Wow, it took a little downdraft since last time we looked. Nonetheless, guys, we have $29 silver. We have $2,300 gold. Okay, all is not lost. And I'm going to I need to put on my headphones, and we're going to have Pat Holland on here. We're going to have some fun. Hello, Mr. Holland. And there you are. Hello, Pat.
Hey there, Ron. Good to see you again, buddy. And hello to all the basement dwellers out there.
Yeah, and on behalf of all the basement dwellers, thanks for joining us, Pat. You're always so much fun to have on the channel. We were just talking about the mini carnage that we've been having in the silver price. Any insights, any thoughts you have on what you've been seeing going on in the silver market lately?
Well, the insights are big picture, broad scope insights. And that is, gang, you have to understand it is literally their prerogative because they have control to control the price of silver. The reason being, it is competition to the dollar. It is the only way to make the dollar look better than and I'm talking about not better than necessarily silver and gold, but better against all the other currencies of the world. This is literally what they do. This is how they do it. And they've done it for a long time.
They've been at it. They do not want gold or silver, for that matter, to do well. Do you think, Pat, that if we do broaden the scope and look back at history, though, that history teaches us that gold and silver actually always come shining through in the end?
Sure, absolutely. There's lots of examples of this. We could go through actual honest to God history of economies in the world, or we can even go to the movie The Wizard of Oz that tells us that gold and silver are the way.
Gold and silver. Let me pull this up real quick, and then we are going to talk about the wood. But our old friend, this is from Alan Greenspan, and this tells us, right? A former Fed chief said this himself. He said, "In the absence of the gold standard, there is no way to prevent confiscation of savings through inflation." He actually said that in 1966, right? He probably changed his tune a little bit later, but in his early days, he was telling the truth.
Yes, he was. And Fed presidents have been known to tell the truth about gold and silver before in the past. Yeah. Of course, their mantra now is the U.S. dollar, the U.S. dollar. And the Fed, by the way, it should be collecting gold. You would think that they would be collecting gold right now in the basement. And the reason being is because all the other central banks in the Eastern Hemisphere are collecting gold in historically high increments right now. They have never collected as much gold as they're collecting right now. They have plans that include gold. The United States have plans that don't include gold, and that's literally digital enslavement through a central bank digital currency.
Yeah, the whole idea of everything being based on credit, right? And the whole idea of a dollar that under the best case scenario loses only 2% of its value per year really is. I mean, it sounds. I feel extreme when I say this, but I can't say it any other way. It is like enslavement of a vast majority of the population, right? Like, we're going to pay you with this paper currency that's guaranteed to lose value, while we benefit from inflation, right? The wealthy, the ultra wealthy benefit. They don't call it inflation. They call it a bull market in the stock market, or their real estate portfolio does well, or whatever the case may be, where the average working person is can't even tread water. It makes me mad, Pat.
Yeah, and here's the worst part. This is campaign season. I'm not going to get all into politics right now, guys.
Right.
I'm going to tell you, during campaign season, I have seen so many Missouri politicians literally tell the people in their messaging how much they care about the Missouri people. But I have seen these people up in Jeff City. I see what they do. Politicians, by and far and large, not all of them, but most of them, literally don't care about you. They care about their job. They care about power. They care about money. That's what they care about. And you can see it in their work when they're working in their state capitals. Yeah. So don't be confused, folks. Basically, you're going to have to take care of yourself in this matter. You're going to have to demand that your state acknowledge gold and silver as legal tender in your state. I'm sorry, I tried not to get into politics because we're out of session in Missouri finally.
Yeah. No. I mean, that's really the way that, the basement dweller, the viewer who's joining us today, Pat, is a gold and silver enthusiast, right? So they need to hear this, and they'll benefit from hearing. And I think most of them, this third person who's joining us right now knows that, silver and gold are probably, historically speaking, the best chance that they have at protecting their wealth, at protecting their family as we go into the future, because it's not getting any better. We could look at the U.S. debt clock, right?
Yep.
Well, let me back up. I wanted to throw something in. You were talking about Missouri and how, let's say, non-concerned most of our politicians are with the general population. I'm sure if we go to Washington, D.C., it's even worse, right? They're not looking out for looking out for the average person. Jerome Powell does not care about the average. They'll all say these things and try to make everybody feel warm and fuzzy. But the reality is they don't care. And if people want to, if our viewer cares about themselves and cares about their family, which they do, right? Most of them are interested in protecting themselves with things like silver and gold and some other real assets also.
Yeah, nothing's more important, gang. And I used to do a lot of financial stuff, on Truth, Money, and Freedom. But one thing that I've talked about is inflation is killing everyone's savings. Mm-hmm. So this is really important to understand. A lot of people who have $1 million or so in their, let's just say their retirement, whether it be a 401k, IRA, or even a convertible life insurance policy. We could go through all of these aspects of things, gang, but they're all losing out to inflation. What is literally keeping up with inflation is gold and silver. If you don't have a very good portion of your retirement in gold and silver, just look at Venezuela. That's the future of America.
Oh,
it's unfortunate. Go ahead.
Sorry, Pat. I accidentally deleted you for a second. Pat was saying, look at Venezuela. That's the future of America. Yeah, I work with in the evening where I work, there's a cleaning crew of Venezuelans. Mama, she's in her 70s. Some people on the channel, I've brought her up before, and her 2 sons and their spouses. And it was absolutely horrible, right? And I have a chart somewhere I could dig out, maybe when you're talking out behind the scenes, that shows the price of silver in Venezuelan bolivars, I think is their currency.
Bolivar.
Yeah, it saved people's lives, and that's what Mama says. She's like, and it's hard, but like, gold and silver literally saved people's lives in that situation. So yesterday we got a big news from the Fed, right? It was a big Fed day, and Jerome spoke, and now they're not going to lower rates, or maybe instead of doing it 3 times, they're saying maybe 1 time. Is it all just a bunch of BS, Pat? I'm just going to say it. I think it's all a bunch of noise. It's all a bunch of BS. It's all a bunch of distractions. Why the Federal Reserve has become more of a public relations firm than a bank, right? They really have, right? And why have they had to become a public relations firm? Because they're managing competence. They're managing, they're not managing anything real. They're managing make-believe and people's beliefs. And any thoughts on that whole situation? And as we talk to our viewer here, I know it's so confusing, right? Like the rates are going up, rates are going down, inflation and everything, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, is it just true that like the real value of silver and gold are gonna come shining through?
It will. They always do. And you give me the name of a country, and they always do. In fact, gold and silver are historic highs in most nations around the planet in their indigenous currency. However, there is something I'd like to ask you, because the United States is rolling something like $7 trillion worth of debt this year. And if they have to do it at the Fed fund rate, I suspect that we're going to be paying about $1.5 trillion of interest per year. after this debt rollover if they do not lower interest rates. Can the United States afford that? The answer is no. They will borrow more money from the Fed to make their interest payments on their debt. That's what they do. And so that borrowing more money into the economy will increase inflation. The very same problem we started this conversation with. It's a snake eating its own tail. And there's just no way out. Unfortunately, there really isn't. They can lower interest rates, gang. And by the way, it's a very precarious situation for the Federal Reserve right now. We've been talking about this in Truth, Money, and Freedom since 2015. They've painted themselves into a corner now. There is too much debt out there, and the problem is there's a lot of interest with that debt. The Federal Reserve does not print the interest when they print the principal. So the next following year, they print more principal that's meant to have a dual role, to help pay interest from the previous year's debt, and then add more into the system that can be fractionally reserved through the commercial banking network. Guys, this will not end well. Now, am I saying it's going to all end this year or next year? No, my crystal ball is broken. But I will tell you, I think, and Ron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is it right around $7 trillion of debt the U.S. has to roll?
Yes. Yeah, well, I've heard different numbers, but it's a lot. And you said something fascinating, Pat, and I want our viewers to consider this, okay? Mm-hmm. All this debt needs to be rolled. We have the 35 trillion in debt, right? So if the Fed lowers interest rates, let's say 3 times by the end of the year, right? And the rate on the debt goes down. The problem is nobody wants it. We already have China, we already have Saudi Arabia, all these countries that are saying are selling our debt right now, right? Mm-hmm. Who's going to buy the debt? Who's going to buy a 30-year treasury note at a lower rate than it is? They're going to be like, if you want us to buy your debt, the rates have to be higher, right? So then, like you said, the only option is for the Fed to come in, and I think they call that yield curve control. It's what Japan's been doing forever now. And the Fed says, well, okay, nobody wants to buy the debt, so I guess we'll just make up some new money. We'll turn on the printing press and we'll buy the debt, right? I mean,
sure.
Right.
And there's all kinds of interesting mechanisms to make exactly what you say happen. But the repo window is a big one.
Yeah.
These member banks, these big 6 member banks, you guys know them, Citibank, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley. You guys know who I'm talking about, Goldman Sachs. What they can do is they can buy these bonds that Saudi Arabia sells. Mm-hmm. And then they can sell it right back to the Fed. They'll buy it at, basically a premium. They'll sell it back to the Fed for that same premium and get cash in return. The Fed is the buyer of last resort, gang. This is called monetizing the debt. Yeah. This is something Ron Paul has warned about for 35 years. It's happening right before our eyes, but the average American is far too busy watching what's going on politically, basically in Washington, D.C. right now, rather than watching what's going on with the financial system. But I assure you, the actions being taken right now will cause a financial earthquake. And I don't know when it'll happen, but I'd like to float a theory with you, Ron. How about a black swan event so that the Fed has to lower interest rates suddenly? So for an unforeseen circumstance, something that happens in the next month or two, and then suddenly they say, oh, because of this event that no one saw coming, we're going to have to lower interest rates. But guess what? Banks are popping. It's just not in the media. Banks are actually starting to go down again. Yeah. And gosh darn it, if I can't remember the last one that went down, it went down about 2 weeks ago. But it was a fairly big bank. But there's several more coming, gang. These banks are not going to stand the pounding right now. I mean, people, and by the way, people may ask why banks are failing. Most of it's on the commercial real estate side. Right. Businesses are going out of business. The new inflation is killing their business.
Go ahead. Well, so if the Fed were to allow interest rates to go up, right, which nobody talks about, but really that's what the market is going to demand. The market would demand that, no, if you want us to buy this debt because nobody wants it and you have so much of it for sale, that's right. You have such a huge supply, nobody wants it because, oh, by the way, we can work a calculator. You need to pay us 7 or 8% or 9% if you want us to give you money for 30 years. The banks are done. I mean, right? I mean, they're already done right now, right? I mean, from if you weren't doing Disneyland accounting on the bank's balance sheets with commercial real estate and their treasury holdings, literally unrealized losses, Disney World type accounting, the banks are done. So if they did let the rates go up, then the consumer, everything would just the only thing they can do to perpetuate the system, I think we figured it out, Pat, is to print more money. That's all they're going to do, and devalue the dollar.
That's right. That is the only thing the Fed has left in their quote unquote toolkit. I love when they say that, their toolkit. Right. Their toolkit is to literally keep printing money, and interest rates be darned. One way or the other, they go up, they go down. It doesn't matter. They're going to print money. Yeah. And the funny thing right now is they are not taking as much money out of the system anymore. What that means is people are not paying down debt. The reason, people, entities, corporations, you name it. Yeah. And the reason being is they can't afford to. Inflation is killing them. They literally don't have enough money to make debt payments anymore. And that makes what we call zombie companies, zombie corporations. Walking around, still operating, but operating at a net loss every year because they can't afford the interest payments.
Yeah. They did well during the zero interest rate environment, but zombies, and it's kind of like the United States government, right? It did pretty well during the zero interest rate environment, but the party is over. And, the only outcome is, it's unfortunate. We don't like it. Look, we're both, I think you and I are patriotic people. I love what Andrew Jackson stood up for and Thomas Jefferson and these guys. But the reality is the value of the dollar is going down. I mean, there's just no other, I mean, it's sure, maybe they could inflate our way, which is what they'll try to do, inflate the way out of it. I mean, inflation's going up and the dollar's going down, and the value of gold and silver, the real value, whether you measure it in loaves of bread, gallons of gasoline, how many ounces of silver it takes to buy a house, or if you decide to measure your dollar, your silver and gold in fiat dollars, it's going up. The real value of the metal is going up.
That's right. And it also, because of the historically high value of gold and silver in many currencies around the planet, it's creating an arbitrage opportunity to suck the physical out of the United States.
Yeah.
So this is something a lot of people aren't talking about right now. I believe in China right now, silver is the equivalent of $38 per ounce.
Yeah.
I think
that's
33.
Correct. 33.
Okay, 33.
Yeah, here, I can pull it up. Hold on. We looked at this earlier, but let me do this real quick, and I can show you. This is from the guy, the Oriental Ghost. He posts this every day. So right there is silver on the Shanghai Gold Exchange, if you can see that, 3309. And then on the Shanghai Futures Exchange, 30. What's interesting, though, Pat, and we were talking about this before you joined us, is that the vaults over there, that the Shanghai Gold Exchange is a physical market, right? It's not like the COMEX and the LBMA. You have to have the metal on in the inventory of metal, even though they're the high priced provider, right? They're $4 an ounce higher. The amount of metal in their inventory available is like plummeting. So, I mean, what does that tell you, right?
Yep, that tells you if you don't hold it, you don't own it. And Chinese follow that same rule too. I don't speak, Cantonese or anything funny like that, but I believe they probably have a saying that's very similar. If you don't hold it, you don't own it.
Yeah. I want to say one more thing about the Fed, and to remind our viewer of this, right? Because even this morning, Suzie was watching the Today Show, and she's like, "Oh, I paused this for you because they're going to talk about the Fed," and they had some person on there saying about raising inflation and raising interest rates and lowering rates and blah, blah, blah. I think it's so critical for us to remember the Fed's full of poop, okay? I mean, we can remember 3 years ago when the Fed said, oh, inflation's temporary, oh, inflation's transitory, oh, inflation's not a problem. And we all know how that worked out. And I want to point out, Mr. Holland, that the Fed had also been on their dot plot for so long that everybody talks about, had been predicting that they weren't even going to start raising interest rates until the end of 2023, right? And we know that they started raising interest rates like two years earlier, and significantly. So whatever the Fed says, it's like, they're full of it, right? They also say that they're looking out for the average middle American, which is complete
I love how they say that they're data reliant, that they make their decisions based on data. No, they're the decisions they make are really, really based on hold on to the seat of your pants. There is a financial firestorm coming because of what we did last year, and we have to do this to avert, absolute, total, complete disaster. That's how they operate, gang. They don't know what they're doing. These fancy, degrees, saying, oh, geez, well, we're smarter than the average bear, because we have these fancy degrees and we're the smartest people in the room. No, these guys literally, it's modern monetary theory now, gang. It's not even Keynesian anymore. Keynesian is dead. We're modern monetary theory. Print as you go, print as you need it. That is literally the way the Federal Reserve is working now. And believe a lot of Western central banks are doing the same thing too. However, they're going to start doing it in Canada and Australia next year with their new digital currency being put forth by their central banks. It's coming, gang.
Yeah. And you talk about, Pat, how they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants. I think it's also critical for us to remember that we're in a new environment, a new geopolitical worldwide environment. I mean, they had a hard enough time, right? They screwed it up real good. I mean, if they're so smart, a lot of what we're dealing with now is fallout from the 2008 great financial crisis, where they just kind of papered over everything. If they're so smart, right, back in 2006, 2007, when America was 20 years ago, it was a completely different world geopolitical environment. The United States exerted much more control and authority over the world financial system. Why couldn't they see that coming? So now, right, now that they're dealing with the ramifications of having never really dealt with what happened during the great financial crisis, we're also coincidentally in a new world geopolitical environment where obviously you have the BRICS countries. You have different countries that aren't just so willing to just go along with whatever the United States says. Is that safe to say?
I would say so. In fact, you could stretch that point out into many, many different arenas. But guys, I'm here to tell you, the Fed literally is flying by the seat of their pants right now. And in fact, it's all looking out for the Fed and the 6-member banks. That's all the Federal Reserve does. They don't care about the United States government. But I want to remind you of one thing. We had to go back to 2000 for this. And this was when Alan Greenspan printed up, I believe it was $435 billion to bail out the stock market. I don't know if everyone remembers that or not, but we had a stock market crash in 2000 and another one in 2001. And in response, there's something called the Plunge Protection Team. There's the Exchange Stabilization Fund. These are both arms of the Treasury. They're not official, but they are unofficial ways of actually stabilizing the economy when there's a stock market crash. Now, here's what Greenspan did. Because the NASDAQ took such a massive hit, he printed up some $435 billion with a B dollars. Back then, that was a lot of money, gang, by the way. But he printed up that much money, and that's what led to the housing crisis in 2008. Because even though that money was placed into the stock market, it eventually got fractionally reserved into something, akin to about $6 trillion. $6 trillion with a T. So 435 billion became, trillions of dollars. And that went into real estate because when the Federal Reserve prints money, that money sloshes around the system looking for a home, and it inflates markets. And that's exactly what Greenspan did that caused the 2008 crisis. And then what they did to, quote unquote, treat the symptoms, the problems of 2008 was to bail out the banks. Right. The very same entities that caused the problem in the first place. Is there another black swan coming like 2008? I don't know. But I'm telling you, if the Fed has to roll over its debt at, what is the Fed funds rate right now? 5.25, Ron?
Yeah, right? 5.25. Yeah.
Yep. If the Fed the federal government has to roll over its debt at 5.25% interest, I'm telling you, gang, you'll see it in the debt clock next year. It'll be pretty stark. You're going to see the interest that we're paying on the debt, which is really about $1 trillion. They're getting really close to it per year.
Right.
They have to collect $1 trillion from you and me, Ron, and all the citizens every year just to pay interest on the debt. This doesn't even hit the principal. It'll go up to 1.5 trillion, another $500 billion if they roll over 7 trillion of debt at today's interest rates.
Yeah, it's a debt spiral. I mean, and I agree with you. I think, obviously the Fed's not going to let on to the fact that they're in crisis mode, but I believe they are in crisis mode. I think, I think from a geopolitical perspective, and also just from a pure mathematical perspective with the amount of debt that they have, that they are in absolute crisis mode, knowing that, I mean, Jerome's in a box, right? I've got a box down here with Jerome in it. I mean, they are in big trouble. And, and I think the world knows that as well, and I think it's true I agree with you about the fact that all this printed money had to find a home really since 2008, right, is what you said. And all that money that's then fractionally reserved. And then you look at what happened during the C-19 crisis and the amount of money that was printed then. Where did it go? Well, it went to, my house went up 2 times. Supposedly, my house is worth twice as much as it was 4 years ago. I mean, are you kidding me? Right? I mean, and oh, by the way, a loaf of bread cost about twice as much as it did 4 years ago. And, everything's gone up. So, and then on top of that, though, I think the biggest bubble of all that nobody really is the general stock market, right? These unbelievable valuations in the stock market, the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and I mean, are people just asleep? I mean, and you like to use this word nominal confusion, right? Like people are like, oh, well, I just put money in the stock market and it goes up and up and up. And, I don't care if it's down because I know it always comes back, because that's all it's done for the last, almost 20 years, right? You just put money in the stock market and magically it becomes more money. But that could change, right? I mean, that could come to an abrupt ending.
Yes, it could. And abrupt is the proper word here, because we've seen the abrupt ending of a bull market before. 1987. I mean, I was alive to see that, and I'm sure you were too, Ron. Yeah. And we're paying attention. That was really huge, and it came out of the blue. Yeah. No one saw it coming. At least no one in traditional banking saw it coming. Maybe the big banks saw it coming. I don't know, but you're right. An abrupt end, basically to this gravy train of printed dollars, I believe is actually already here, because most people are not keeping up with inflation now. So that's the end of the train for you and me, Ron. Yeah. We're done. We just have to pay more by getting the same amount of income. We have to pay more for everything, so we have less expendable income. And this is where people have to start making tough choices. And by the way, I'm a big advocate of people using YouTube University to learn how to fix the stuff in their house. I'm a big proponent of that. As opposed to paying for a professional to come out. If you are hurting for money, learn how to fix things yourselves. And it's a great trip to do that too. And it's a lot of satisfaction in fixing your own stuff.
Oh yeah. I do it all the time, and it's absolutely satisfying. And a friend of mine once said, we'll get back to gold and silver here in a second, but a friend of mine once said, I put a new power steering pump in our Acura. I've been fixing stuff my whole life. But I'm not a car mechanic. But a friend of mine once said, if you try to do it and it doesn't work, you're usually not going to hurt anything. You're not going to make it any worse, So it doesn't hurt to give it a shot to try to fix it yourself, Right? And you're right, because a lot of times, and then I'll promise I'll go back to silver and gold basement dwellers, but a lot of times you can fix things with a $15 part that you buy on Amazon, that if you brought your car to the dealership, for instance, they're going to charge you $400 to do the exact same thing. I mean, it's nuts.
That's right.
It's absolutely crazy. Oh, last week, Pat, we had this big downdraft, almost $80 per ounce in gold. And the reason why was because the Chinese central bank, they didn't sell gold. They just stopped buying for 1 month. Right. And I think Peter Schiff was the first person who I heard bring this up. He said, well, let's remember that the month of May, now we know the Chinese central bank didn't buy any gold, but we also hit an all-time high in gold for the month during the month of May. To me, do you think there's a concerted media effort to jump on any reason available to push down and to speak poorly about the precious metals?
Yes, it is, because it's getting big in the States.
Yeah.
It's not so much, guys. I mean, that's another thing too, is, we haven't even talked about the states and what the states are doing. But if you think the federal government hasn't noticed our efforts in the states to make gold and silver legal tender, you're mistaken. They have noticed. They know this. In fact, there's been efforts, even though half-hearted ones, because we know it can't work on the federal level. There's been efforts on the federal level to go back to a gold standard and somehow back up the dollar with gold. But the problem is it'll never, ever, ever, ever happen on the federal level. Never. But look at the states are doing it. Yeah. And this is actually a very, very good thing. And it's very timely. And let's talk about one state here real quick. Let's talk about Louisiana.
Okay.
Louisiana this year. And by the way, we should do another show. I'm not prepared for this right now, but there's like 9 or 10 states that have actually done stuff with silver and gold. But I do know Louisiana literally has the golden ticket. They got, silver and gold as legal tender in their state. They actually got it done, Ron. And so they're the only state that got it done. Now, we should talk about Missouri at some point, why we didn't get it done. But I think most people know that. In fact, I think Daniel Diaz came on your show and talked about that. But the fact is, only Louisiana got it done. But other states did other things that are absolutely necessary.
Hey, Pat, I'm going to interrupt you for a second because I'm going to pull up an article briefly about what you're talking about. This is, wrong one. Here it is. From SilverSeek. Louisiana reaffirms gold as legal tender. JP Cortez wrote this. And I had some highlights. Louisiana Sound Money Bill simply affirms that any gold or silver coin, specie, or bullion issued by the U.S. government is considered legal tender whenever voluntarily agreed upon by both parties to a contract. The measure enjoyed popular support, receiving only one no vote on the floor throughout the Louisiana House and Senate. What do you think about that, Mr. Holland?
It makes me wish that we had the Louisiana General Assembly in the state of Missouri.
Yeah.
There's, by the way, congratulations to them. This is a huge move.
Yeah.
For the state of Louisiana to protect their citizens.
Yeah.
And this is what many states are trying to do across the United States of America, but there is resistance. In the case of Nebraska, Nebraska actually got rid of capital gains tax on gold and silver. That's another huge move. Some people call it income tax on gold and silver. But what it is you pay a tax on gold and silver as the value goes up, right?
Yeah.
You hold on to physical gold and silver, and then you go and sell it, and then suddenly they want to tax your income you made on the difference from your purchase price versus the sale price. So you got to get rid of that when you do legal tender too. Nebraska is clearly moving to legal tender. And they got done what they thought they could get done in 2024, which was get rid of capital gains tax. So any states that are actually moving in this direction, and I have been involved in that. The Citizens for Sound Money have been involved in this, and others. But the fact of the matter is, this is the only way. I have thought about this for decades, gang, decades and decades. This is the only way to protect citizens from inflation, and now from the threat of a central bank digital currency. This is it. This is all you got. This is why the Eastern hemisphere is actually collecting gold in their central banks, gang. This is why. They see it too.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's whatever state, right? Most, and not everybody who's with us is in the United States. A lot of people are maybe in a country that holds gold and silver in a different regard, but probably 80% of the people. So for the viewer, I'll ask you, if you are in the United States and if you want to hold silver and gold to protect yourself, to protect your family, then this legal tender legislation is exciting, and it's happening state by state by state. I know it's probably not the best analogy, but to me it feels like a lot like when marijuana was legalized throughout the country, right? It was little by little by little, and then suddenly, even though on a federal level it's not, now it's pretty much been accepted in many states throughout the country. And that's what it feels like is happening with the gold and silver legal tender legislation. It's not all going to happen in one year, But, I think Wisconsin passed some type of legislation. There's been all types of these little pieces that are coming together, protecting people's constitutional right to use silver and gold as legal tender.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And so that makes Louisiana officially the 6th state. We're hoping it would be Missouri. The weird part is, gang, I've been in touch with some politicians in other states, and they're getting this stuff done without even a massive grassroots effort, without any grassroots effort whatsoever. In fact, when I was talking to a representative in Arkansas, talking about how they got it done so easily and so quickly, they said it just is common sense.
Yeah.
There was no resistance to this. In Arkansas, there was none in Tennessee, there was none in Louisiana, there was none in Alabama last year. There's just no resistance. In Missouri, it's political resistance. Mm-hmm. It's Dean Plocher, who is actually running for lieutenant governor, decided single-handedly for 2 years in a row that the state of Missouri cannot have silver and gold as legal tender. He made the decision. He did this unilaterally. Dean Plocher.
Yeah.
And so at any rate, Dean Plocher has termed out, gang, so he will not be Speaker of the House next year. So we can see what we can get done with Dean Plocher finally gone. And so, I mean, this is literally what it was, gang. It was a single man deciding that Senator Eigel, who sponsored the bill, can't have a win because he's running for governor and Dean Plocher hates him. That's literally what it came down to. That's how petty things are. And one more thing I'd like to say, before we get off the subject, I want to make sure it's covered. Daniel Diaz came to help us here in the state of Missouri with Citizens for Sound Money. Mm-hmm. He has never seen anything as dysfunctional as he's seen in the Missouri General Assembly. Ever. Yeah. Never. He's been to a lot of states, lobbied in a lot of states. I don't lobby in other states, gang. I make a lot of phone calls to other states. I may or may not have made a trip to a capital here and there close by Missouri, but by far and large, I do my work by phone and by email and by video conferencing. And the fact of the matter is, I have had an easier time dealing with most other states than I have dealing with my own, but it's because of the power brokers like Dean Plocher, who literally refused gold and silver legal tender in the state of Missouri. By the way, I'm saying this very deliberately, gang. Dean Plocher single-handedly decided for the state of Missouri, we can't have gold and silver. And the reason being is because he hates the sponsor, Bill Eigel, who is running for governor. Mm-hmm. That's why. So that's how petty things can get in Missouri. Absolutely petty. So remember this, Dean Plocher's running for lieutenant governor in the state of Missouri. He has shown how petty he is. Do we want him in as lieutenant governor? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Pick someone else, in my opinion. By the way, I don't tell anyone who to vote for, but I tell people who not to vote for, all the time, because I have experience up at the Capitol. I know all these players. I know these people.
Yeah.
And for that reason, a lot of people are asking me who to vote for, but I generally just say who not to vote for. On our live streams, I'll tell you who I am voting for, but I don't endorse folks. But so you need people in your General Assembly. And by the way, Ron, you and I should plan on probably between Thanksgiving and Christmas, you and I should plan on doing a special 1-hour episode after elections are over about getting gold and silver legislation in your state.
Yeah,
and actually,
that would be great.
A step-by-step guide. We can provide you all the materials, make it real easy for you. Every state should be working towards this.
Towards legal tender. Yeah, because the world is working towards it. We were talking
anyway.
Yeah, the Eastern world. Well, because we're talking about how in the United States this is starting to catalyze, right? It feels like there's more and more people waking up, right? And we know state by state, but efforts of people like you and Daniel Diaz from Citizens for Sound Money, it's growing in the states. But I want to run through this list of just some recent headlines that I've seen. We know in China, right, hundreds of thousands of people are lining up at times to buy physical gold. There's been some recent reports in Vietnam. I pulled up a couple live streams of the Vietnamese newspaper showing people lining up at the banks because they can buy physical gold. Korea has these are starting to put the gold vending machines in their convenience stores. And interestingly enough, South Korea has more convenience stores than anywhere else on the planet. Young people are buying this goal all over the world, right? It's happening all over the place and starting to, I think, catalyze here in the United States. And it was part of our history. I mean, we got to remember, right? Like we were a country that was based on gold and silver. And during that period, right, the United States accomplished economically what had never been accomplished in the history of the planet. So, going back to some type of gold-backed, silver-backed system, I think now it's like, oh, you're acted like you're treated like an outcast or whatever the case may be. Well, it worked pretty darn well, right? And it's worked pretty well for other countries throughout history as well. What about the Wizard of Oz, Pat? What are your thoughts on the classic movie that before it was a movie was a book? That really, I think, had a lot to do with the struggles with silver and gold in this country.
Yes, in the 1890s, Frank Baum, I think it's L. Frank Baum is the author, I think, of The Wizard of Oz, and I do believe it might be the year 1900 or 1901 that the book came out, The Wizard of Oz, but it was based on what was going on in the presidential election cycle of 1896.
Yeah,
because silver was temporarily demonetized. So in the 1890s, they were talking about doing that and keeping on a very restrictive gold standard. The people wanted silver. They were okay with gold too, but they definitely wanted silver. It was much easier to transact with for smaller transactions. So, that's the thing is the ruby slippers on Technicolor, actually were supposed to be silver slippers because that's what they were in the book. But silver did not show up as well in color back then with the technology they had as ruby, the eye-popping ruby slippers.
Interesting.
So that's what it was. But the fact of the matter is silver will save you. Silver will bring you home. And so that was the kind of the message in the book. And so the silver
the yellow brick road, and it was my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that at the time the big bankers wanted gold. And the reason the big bankers wanted gold was because the big European bankers, who at the time, this was before World War I and World War II, the European bankers were kind of the equivalent of what the United States is now, right? They were the world hegemony, and they were pushing the American bankers to be more focused on a gold-backed system because that would have benefited them as well. But it's, pardon my language, screwed over the average American, who at that time was generally a farmer, as I understand it.
Yep,
right.
That's correct.
So the yellow brick road was this idea they were trying to lead the Dorothys of the world, who was a farm girl, right?
The average person, the citizen. Yeah.
Follow the yellow brick road to the Emerald City, and then when they got there, they realized the man behind the curtain was a dirty banker, right?
Sure. It was a dirty banker. It was a facade of prosperity. In the land of Oz, the Wizard of Oz, OZ, short for ounces.
So,
that's it's an abbreviation for ounces, which is the measure for gold and silver.
Right.
Speak to the economic policies and the illusions of wealth that dominated during Baum's time. This representation of the economic system and the quest for financial stability kind of reveals the complexities of the American dream and the challenges of achieving it in a landscape marked by inequality and illusion. I mean, this was the Wizard of Oz was literally a slice of history that basically keeps repeating over and over and over again. And the reason it does, and it's so relevant, whether or not you're living in America, it doesn't matter. The monetary system affects you. It doesn't matter what country you're in. And the world reserve currency affects you. And it doesn't matter what country you're in. So this story still remains pertinent today. And it always will be. And so, but yeah, there was talk of getting off a silver standard. And that's why Dorothy, the average person, had the silver slippers that could always save her. They always had the capability of saving her as an individual. And she just didn't know how to use it. So she had to be taught by, the good witch, Gwyneth, I believe, literally how to use silver to save yourself.
Wow.
So, there's a lot of underlying tones in that movie, but it was based on what was happening in 1896 in the presidential election cycle. That's what it was truly based on.
And one of the candidates got assassinated, which that was very one of the guys who was in favor of going back to the silver standard.
Yeah,
at the time.
I didn't know he was assassinated. I knew he died, but
was shot, or
okay.
Well, okay, maybe I may have misspoke there, so I want to clarify that for the audience. But he died shortly after. It was very let's say there's an air of suspicion over his death, is what I read. Yeah,
sure. And so, at any rate, when you're watching The Wizard of Oz, wonderful tale. Just remember, it was based on political and economic upheaval in 1896. Mm-hmm. That's what the story was based on. And it was based on gold and silver, and how literally silver can save you. Just like it saved Dorothy in the end. She just didn't understand silver. She didn't understand how important it was intrinsically. She didn't understand, basically the fact that it's used in industry. In fact, they were starting to use silver in industry back then because they were making film with silver. The silver screen, they made movie screens in the early 1900s, basically impregnated with silver.
Wow.
So that mirror-like thing going on there.
Yeah.
That's why we still call it to this day the silver screen. That has nothing to do with silver anymore in the screens they project movies onto.
Yeah.
But still, it's in your TV screen, gang. So you still have the silver screen at home.
Yeah.
But this is the importance. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, this is the importance of the lessons we should learn from the movie The Wizard of Oz, which was based on a book. Now, it's an entertaining film. I get that. But there's so many lessons in there. And for those who have not read the book, I do recommend you read the book if you want to get, some of the deeper meanings that Baum was trying to get across in that timeless book. That timeless classic.
Yeah, I think 99% of people, including me, that have watched The Wizard of Oz, that have no idea that what it was really truly stating. Do you have 5 more minutes, Pat? Because I have one more subject I want to cover with you and get your opinion on this. One of my viewers, well, we're going to talk about skyrocketing demand for silver. Okay, possibly skyrocketing prices as we go into the next decades. But one of my viewers pointed out this idea, and I don't know if it was original to him or it doesn't really matter, but that oil, and as you were talking about the industrial uses of silver just coming onto the scene then, but oil really around the 1920s became oil was nothing up to that point, not very important, but oil over the last 100 years from 1924 through today has become like the base of the world economy, right? The energy source, the used in plastics, all this stuff. This gentleman brought up this idea that silver going into the next 100 years could almost become like the new oil, right? And if you think about it, it does make sense, right? Because silver now is being used in solar panels, like unbelievable amounts of silver are being used up in solar panels. It's used in everything electronic, and electronics are permeating every corner of our lives. He said silver, his prediction is like silver could become the new oil. Any thoughts on that one?
Absolutely. It's the second most useful commodity on the planet after oil. Oil's number 1, gang. Silver's number 2. And by the way, hemp is number 3. Just in case you know, that's the pecking order. And we're talking about the versatility of minerals, or basically resources that we have in the planet. Oil is number 1. It's incredibly versatile. It's not just for getting your plane to and fro and your car to and fro. Oil is plastic. Oil is pharmaceutical. I mean, we could go on.
Fertilizer.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
So silver is.
Go ahead. Well, I mean, but as we go into this next 100 years and we look at where's energy going to come from?
Correct.
Go ahead. Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I have got a tale for you and a warning. Everyone's seeing their energy prices go up. My wife and I were talking about our energy bill recently, electricity bill. We're on a co-op, and we're getting all hit with all kinds of new fees and increasing prices in electricity. What you may not know is this is a federal mandate for the prices of electricity to go up. Where is the extra money going when it's literally federal red tape or EPA regulation that's causing electricity prices to go up? I can tell you exactly where it's going. It's not going to make you happy, or it may make you happy. We're subsidizing solar panels. Remember what I was talking about when the corporations, the big corporations and the rich people and the bankers never pay full price for anything, ever.
Right.
They get a discount, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what's happening. They're getting a discount on solar panels, and that discount is coming right out of your wallet in the extra subsidies that you are paying your electric company.
Mm-hmm.
So silver for solar panels is being directly, the price of silver is being directly affected by this.
Yeah.
So this is something a lot of folks may not know about, but this is why your prices have increased for electricity, is you're subsidizing the people getting silver, believe it or not. So Ron, it's directly linked. So thank you for bringing that up. I probably would have forgot about that otherwise.
Yeah. And the number of solar panels, and the most recent data I read is there's about 2/3 of an ounce of silver per solar panel.
Mm-hmm.
Using the current kind of dominant technology. But this next level, I think it's TopCon is the next type of panel going to come out. We'll use, some people say, up to 50% more. But let's just say there's like an ounce of silver eventually in every solar panel. And Jim, one of my other viewers, brought up a great point. He works in the electric field. He said, you got to remember, too, when that silver goes into that solar panel, you can say bye-bye to it for at least 15 or 20 years, right? And we don't know that we'll ever be able to get it back out of that solar panel. And when you look at the amount of panels being manufactured in China and India right now, it's staggering. And when you think about India, let's just look at India quickly alone. India has like the most rapidly expanding consumer class in the world, right? The Indian economy is doing well. You got hundreds of millions of people that are suddenly moving from huts to little houses. And guess what they want? They want electricity. And what's the easiest way for them to get electricity, right? Solar. Put some solar panels on the roof and run a wire, and they have electricity. It's like instantaneous. It's clean. Right. So this demand for silver, for solar panels, will likely just continue to explode.
Yep. And just so you remember, the folks out here that are paying these sky high electricity bills are literally helping to keep the price of silver down.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, this is the mechanism they put in place. You and I, Ron, by paying higher electricity bills, are subsidizing the undercutting of the actual value of silver.
Yeah.
These are the kinds of tactics they use, gang, whether it be central banks, businesses, government. But the subsidizing of solar panels is not a new thing. They've been doing that for quite some time now. But that is also a way to keep the silver gold ratio nice and high. I mean, what is it right now? Like 80, 85 or something right now, silver gold ratio?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, around there. Yeah.
It's absolutely insane, gang. It should never have been that high. And even at its worst in America, the ratio was 16-1.
Yeah.
Basically when we were still on a precious metal standard. So yeah, silver is getting whipped and being taken to the woodshed daily by the United States government. I want to remind you all that, and this is once again from a guy who's been looking at this for a long time. You have to remember now, the COMEX is controlled by the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which is controlled by the Treasury. Mm-hmm. So actually, the lineage goes directly to the executive branch of the United States government. That's the president of the United States. It doesn't matter who the president is. Silver and gold are manipulated, particularly silver.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican.
That's correct.
They're gonna keep pushing down the price of silver. And I know John Little at the Silver Academy's dug in, and even like the defense industry needs massive amounts of silver. The space industry needs massive amounts of silver. Like everybody needs massive amounts. And I know it's frustrating for me, and I know you're a silver. I mean, to me, I just kind of keep a long-term generational view that the price of silver, the value, and not the price, I mean, the price, who knows who knows what a dollar is going to be worth 15 or 20 years from now, or 5 years from now, who knows? But that the real value of silver is there. And, it's just insane too, Pat, when you think about the fact that there's less and less silver coming out of the ground every year.
That's right.
I mean, they can't find it. There's no money. This is, and then I promise we'll wrap this up, but it makes no sense to me that the entire market capitalization of the entire silver mining industry is less than 50, after a day like today, probably less than $14 billion. The market cap of GameStop was over that last week,
Yep.
right? The market cap of Home Depot, and I know it's a big chain of hardware stores, but it's $300 billion. That means that the entire silver mining industry is worth less than 4% of the value of Home Depot, a big box hardware store. I mean,
That's right.
It's just insane. So there's no money going into it, and and then you got Mexico, who's like doing everything they can to stop any mining development in their country. I mean, Mexico's the number one provider of silver in the world. Production there's down like almost 30% in the last 2 years. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
You talked about silver being the energy of the future. Mexico realizes this too.
Yeah.
And they have literally they have underground banks, because they have so much silver underneath their soil. They want to hold on to that. And if it's mined out, it's much more likely it's going to actually enter the system, which is not what they want at this time. Mm-hmm. They want to hold on to the silver that they have until it's really worth what it's truly worth. And, in terms of pesos, dollars, or whatever the next world reserve currency will be.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Mexico's smart. And they have a lot of oil too. Mexico is just resource rich. Yeah. They have a lot of stuff in Mexico. And by the way, I foresee a time when we're bowing to Mexico because they have all the wealth. Mm-hmm. They have all the oil. They have all the silver. This is the energy, gang, the energy that moves the planet, and Mexico's got it in spades.
Yeah.
So, this is something that the United States knows, understands, and that's why we try to keep Mexico as a friend. And also, Mexico has been exploited for years for its cheap labor and for its resources. But the new Mexican government, or at least in the last 5 years, have anticipated this has to stop because they are the energy kings of the future. Wow. They have oil and they have silver.
Yeah, yeah. And silver is, in a lot of ways, a big component at minimum of the energy of the future, but it's also obviously a massive component of the technology revolution going on in the world as well. Sure. It's gonna be an interesting ride. Pat, we've had 900 people join us. That's massive.
Hey,
yeah, I know. Awesome. Everybody, please say thank you to Pat in the comments section. If you want to learn more about Pat, I have a link to his organization in the description. Pat, you want to give everybody a little
First off, I want to let you guys know, and thank you for that, Ron.
Mm-hmm.
Want to let you guys know I will be literally in New Hampshire for a week, and it starts this coming up Sunday all the way through a lot of folks would recognize that time frame. That is what they call Pork Fest or Porcupine Fest. It's a libertarian thing. Now, I do not associate with the Libertarian Party. I have lots of libertarian friends, but Daniel from Citizens for Sound Money and myself and many others like Rob Kynes is going to be there, Keynes, and are going to be there actually with the sound money management machine in our tent. So we're actually introducing a lot of folks to sound money or helping them with legislative efforts, basically spreading the word about sound money. And we're going to have a live stream on not this Saturday, but next Saturday. Mm-hmm. And that will be on Citizens for Sound Money's YouTube channel. And it's going to be a Yuba-Tubathon. We're going to have a lot of really, really cool people come on, Ron. I think you may know several of them personally. You may even be one of them, actually.
Yeah, I talked with Daniel this morning. I think I'll be on there. And then I'll be doing a live stream on Thursday morning, I think 9:15 Central.
With Adam Van, right?
With Adam, and you'll be on there. So it's going to be really exciting. If people want to support you, it's the Missouri Freedom Initiative. Is that right, Pat?
That's right. And we don't take financial donations, gang. We're not that kind of organization. But please do, especially if you're in the state of Missouri or if you're in another state and you want to get gold and silver legislation done in your state, one thing you can do is sign up to our email list. There's no charge, and we don't sell or share your information with anybody. Get on the email list, and we do talk about other things other than silver and gold, but that's our top priority legislatively with the Missouri Freedom Initiative and getting a depository in the state of Missouri. So that's Missouri Freedom Initiative's top priority, and Citizens for Sound Money are doing this in other states as well. So, basically we're teaming up, basically with the people who of like mind that are trying to have the same exact goals to get the same exact thing done. And Citizens for Sound Money is doing this fantastic job doing this as well. So please do. And by the way, we'll give you a heads up when we do this, but it should be a lot of fun. We should have a lot of really, really cool guests coming on. But the main message is and always has been literally sound money legislation in all 50 states. Get it done, turn it into laws so we can start using gold and silver again and protect ourselves. No matter how much inflation Uncle Sam throws at you, you'll be protected because the business down the street deals in gold and silver. You deal in gold and silver. Your local bank is actually dealing in gold and silver as well. This is how we survive as a country.
Yeah, just like the legislation in Louisiana points out, right? That businesses can deal with each other in silver and gold. So thank you, Pat.
They must be given the choice. That's it. That's all we're asking for, is that people get a choice. We are not trying to get rid of the dollar. The dollar will still be there, gang, and it will still be the currency that they measure everything else against. It'll be there, but if you have the option, you can save your wealth and save your savings, save your retirement, save your family.
In silver and gold. Pat, on behalf of myself, on behalf of our viewer who's been with us today, you've been very generous with your time. As always, it's always fascinating to hear from you and get your perspective on things. Thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time in the basement.
Thank you very much, Ron. God bless all of you guys. Keep up the good work, gang.